I'm not sure if anyone's going to agree with my opinion here, but is it safe to say that the people behind the Loud House only puts the focus on Luna rather than everything else? Because the Luna Loud episodes are literally the best episodes in the later seasons and possibly the saving grace of the Loud House, which isn't saying much considering that everything else in this series has been overshadowing the positives. Though then again, the Casagrandes episode is not a bad episode, but you can honestly tell which episode is superior. But let's get into the two episodes from the Loud House, Band Together, and the Casagrandes episode, The Bros in the Band. In Band Together, Luna encountered Katie Chris, who is the biggest manager in the music industry, which gave her an idea to have her be impressed, which she succeeds. Unfortunately, she only picks her and not the entire band, mainly the Moon Goats. In The Bros in the Band, Paul witnessed Bobby's amazing singing, which gave him an idea to have Bobby be a new singer in his band, which is Bobby's long-time dream. But unfortunately, the band itself is a punk rock band, which Bobby isn't familiar with, considering that he just wants to be in a normal band. Then again, Luna will probably relate to Bobby's predicament, considering that what she's dealing with in her episode is mainly the same thing, except it centers around professionals rather than a punk rock band. Though then again, these two characters don't easily get along aside from maybe force of habits, but they never hung out in that episode, and the only encounter was an undue pressure. Well, Luna's just trying to get the tickets quietly, and Bobby is out of the way because of the bets that Loey is in. In all honesty, if I'm ever going to see an imagining scene of these two discussing the stories together, Luna may understand punk rock bands, but at the same time, it won't change the fact that these two characters are highly different from each other. But still, these two episodes have similar plots involving the main character just wants to go into a band, even though that Luna is technically already in the band. But the band itself is completely different than the original band, and even though that Bobby wasn't really in the band and his longtime dream was in the band, he's still doing the same struggles of what Luna is dealing with in Band Together. And in The Bros in the Band, regardless if it may be a watered down version, it's not a bad episode. Now, yes, I'm fully aware that this is around the time where the flannerization got worse when it comes to Bobby's character, but in all honesty, with his development of being in a band, which is his dream, it's not really a problem with me, considering that he just literally wants to move forward with his life. And even though in the finale of this show, him being in a band doesn't contribute to much, considering that he could have gotten more money to buy food for himself and whatnot, it really feels like people have given up on this show since that they given up on Loud House altogether. I'm just saying this for a fact that when I hear less people talk about Season 3 of the Casagrandes, it's literally the point where they given up with the Loud House, knowing full well that the movie just didn't do much for them. And I'm talking about the movie from the Loud House from 2021, which was right before Season 3 of the Casagrandes came out. And I'm pretty sure the people who given up on the show probably gave up on the Loud House from Season 5 after witnessing Schooled, so they didn't get the chance to watch this episode. I'm just saying this for a fact that when I watch those critique videos centering around the Loud House and the problems centering around it, all I can think of is that nobody probably watched this episode, and not a lot of people watched The Bros in the Band. But moving past that, getting back to the Loud House episode, I just found it really intriguing that the Loud House production took Luna's character seriously, since that this episode is really good and literally the saving graces of Season 5. Since this is the third time I'm using a Luna Loud episode in these videos, it just made me appreciate of how well developed Luna's character is, and despite with one bad episode, which is Deep Cuts, it's an indication that they focus on Luna a lot more when it comes to how she's written, which is honestly disappointing that the bad episodes is still overshadowing Luna's development. I mean, you can say all you want that her development mainly concluded in really loud music, but at the same time, there's always an aftermath after the final chapter of a character arc, which isn't saying much for the other characters in this show, but it's not a bad thing when it's done correctly. K. Chris, who is a huge manager in the band industry, takes her job seriously, and to be perfectly real with you, considering that she's not an antagonist and she mostly takes her job seriously when it comes to music and her influence, it's really a shame that we don't get a lot of characters like her. Though to be fair, in Bros, in the band's favor, the punk band isn't really professional. But at the same time, knowing full well that they took the Loud House episode seriously when it comes to the professionals in the band, it really gives you the idea that Luna is just trying to take a different route in comparison to the different route that she took in really loud music if she portrays herself as a pop star. But since that this episode has her making a choice of her own volition rather than getting manipulated from what she experienced from really loud music, it's honestly an interesting take for her because she has a choice on going to be part of a professional band, but at the same time, this would also lead to her abandoning the Moon Goats that she was the lead singer in. Granted, we all know that Luna would never abandon the Moon Goats despite she can't be able to go in due to the Moon Goats having no other choice but having Chunk being the lead singer, which in all honesty, it really shows that they actually showcase of how it feels on not being in a band once you drop out or break out, but at the same time Luna didn't technically break out on her own, she just went to a newer band, but you know what I mean. The point is that whenever I see these types of development involving these characters, it made me appreciate of how the people behind this show, despite the terrible episodes that they make, actually do their showcase and dedication towards Luna's character. Granted, I can't say for a fact that people would go back to the Loud House because of her, because it just isn't enough, but at the same time, there was still good in the later seasons of the Loud House. But let's get back to the bros in the band since we need to talk about what Bobby is doing, along with getting into the endings of both episodes. Ryan, Sergio, and Carlota try to change Bobby completely by being as a punk rock person so that it can convince the punk rock band that he is really into the band spirit when it comes to punk rock, but unfortunately this will lead to a sacrifice similar to Luna in Band Together, but it's actions that speak louder than words, considering that Bobby is pretending or acting as a punk pal to be in the band, but this only leads to him being kicked out of the Mikado or getting swept out of the Mikado, since that he is going against everything that he was. And to tell you the truth, it's really depressing that Hector is really likable in comparison to how he was in Let's Get Ready to Rumble that I talked about 2 weeks ago. This is similar to how the Moon Goats need to do a last minute decision by having Chunk being the lead singer and Luna can't be able to go in, even though in this case it's mainly Bobby just going against everything that he was. Well, he needs to pretend to be a punk rock person in front of the punk rock band, which only having Hector resent Bobby even more. Believe me when I say this, you can easily tell that Hector is mostly regretful, but at the same time, it's not on the same levels of how the Moon Goats felt regretful, considering that they are, but at the same time, they had no other option, knowing full well that Luna decides to go to a professional band rather than staying with the Moon Goats. The punk rock band itself in this episode are stereotypical, but considering that Loud House characters are stereotypical, I'm not really complaining, knowing full well that it's a punk rock band. There are different types of bands, and to tell you the truth, knowing how Bobby needs to change himself in order to be part of the punk rock band, it's honestly a task that is a lot more difficult for him to overcome in order to convince the punk rock band. But to tell you the truth, his life would have been almost of what Chunk's life would have been like if Luna didn't got the full story from royalty to nowhere. I mean, this episode isn't going to top the Loud House episode, but to tell you the truth, it's not a bad episode, and the more you think about it, this is also similar to the second half of Willie Loud's music. Well, Luna has to be Lola in order to be a pop star that no one is going to like, and this is the same route that Bobby is taking. I don't know how it's possible, but they unintentionally did a Lincoln and Carlota similarity situation involving Luna and Bobby. Do you really understand what I'm talking about? Mainly of how two characters are going through a scenario that no one has seen coming, but I have. Is this literally the second Lincoln and Carlota similarity that no one saw coming? Because in all honesty, the image that I have in my head is if Lulu interacts with punk rock Bobby, and in all honesty, it's an alternative universe that wouldn't even work if you even put it in non-alternative universe, if you have the knowledge of Lulu and punk rock Bobby being in a relationship that really feels off-putting but works for an alternative universe. That would probably work if Lulu was doing a Hannah Montana gig while she's disguised herself as a pop star. Because mainly the fact that even if you would still call Luna Lana in your own alternative universe, you would still have her have the same personality and likability and qualities when it comes to her being interested in music. And when it comes to her encounters with Bobby as a punk rock star, I'm not sure how it would go out. I'm not sure how it would turn out, but at the same time, there was a lot of random possibilities since I just came up with this assumption, similar to the Lincoln and Carlota thing earlier this year. But less said about that the better. As for the endings of both episodes, the ending in Band Together is better, considering that the change that they did when it comes to continuing arcs is having Chunk being part of the professional band, which is the spot that Luna gave to Chunk, which allows her to be back in the Moon Goats as the lead singer. Chunk really deserves this. After witnessing his development from Molly to Noel, it's obviously bound to happen to have Luna return him a favor, since it means everything to him rather than hers. For the ending in The Bros in the Band, it's the same thing as the ending in Willie Loud's music when it comes to Bobby being himself, which in all honesty, there's nothing wrong with Bobby doing the same thing as what Luna did in that episode. Sometimes when episodes don't try too hard, and it's mainly for entertainment, then this episode is a perfect example of that. Granted, it's mainly in some occasions where the Casagrandes episodes don't try too hard, mainly Let's Get Ready to Rumba, but they're mainly different stories. So for me personally, whenever I see this episode's ending, it's mainly what Bobby's future would have been like if he took his job as a singer seriously in the same ways of what Luna does by being in a band. Granted, I'm not sure how any of that works when it comes to getting paid, but it's mainly debatable. Sometimes they treat bands that aren't professional as good bands that actually get paid, but at times I also see the School of Rock movie, well, if it's mainly of how the main character is portrayed by being into rock music, which is what Luna is in this scenario, even though she's developed, it's debatable that you don't get paid. I'm not sure how any of this works, it's just my opinion and perspective. So anyway, that's my Loud House vs. Casagrandes project for today. And even though if the Casagrandes episode isn't as good as the Loud House episode, it's still not a bad episode. And since I'm in the Luna Loud mood at the moment, I'm planning on doing another Luna Loud episode by comparing it to a Casagrandes episode in 2 weeks. I'm gonna keep it as a surprise, but at the same time, I'm planning on doing a comparison video involving the Casagrandes episode that I really wanted to compare it with. I'm giving the Loud House episode an 8 out of 10, while the Casagrandes episode gets a 7 out of 10.